long interview of the Visible series. My name is Callan Rush, and I'm really glad you're with us. And I'm so incredibly excited to be with this very first guest who is going to kick off the entire Visible series. And so I'm going to introduce her in a minute. But for those of you that are new to Female Strong is a platform with the sole purpose of raising the voice and the visibility of women. I've come very clear that that is this mission, that is this purpose. And there are so many incredible women that have incredible perspectives and voices and platforms and offerings to the world. And we just don't get to see them that often. And so I'm going to do everything I possibly can with the Female Strong platform to continually raise the visibility and the voices of women so that we can start to contribute our unique perspectives to the world. And I think now more than ever, it is absolutely vital that we get that female voice in there. And so I was just speaking with my guest moments before we went live here, and I was telling her that, in my opinion, her work and what she is offering to the world are literally, it's the baseline for women. If you can think of like all the things as women try to make, as we as women try to make sense of our reality and what drives us and what stops us and what keeps us from the things that we desire and the things that actually we are able to attract. If you think of that as a big puzzle piece, I feel like her work are the corner pieces of the puzzle. And without those corner pieces, you can't really figure out where everything else goes. And so you can tell I'm really excited. I'm really thrilled to introduce you to her. So without further ado, I'm going to do that right now. So the woman I have the great pleasure of interviewing today, her name is Dr. Valerie Rain. She's a psychologist and a women's mental health expert, as well as a business consultant who helps people achieve the best ROI by achieving the best mental health, because we know that our businesses don't grow unless we grow. I'm currently experiencing that. And she does all of this without actual therapy. It's very conversational, her approach, but she's also really knows what she's doing, and her entire work is really backed up by research, by science, by experiential and anecdotal research as well, working with her clients over the years. She holds an EDM in psychological counseling from Columbia University, as well as a PhD from the Institute of Transpersonal Psychology, which is one of my favorite branches of psychology. It's just such a beautiful way of looking at humans. And she's a sought-after speaker at conferences and companies committed to diversity and inclusion, leadership development, and unlocking people's potential. I could go on and on about her credentials, but I'm going to just give you a little personal advocacy for her. I don't actually even remember when I first became aware of her. I think we kind of were circling around each other for years. But then I saw an advertisement for her book, which is what we're kind of here to talk about. And it's called The Patriarchy Stress Disorder. Hopefully this is not going to go reversed, but you can actually see it. Oh, there we go. Patriarchy Stress Disorder. And I saw a picture of this on Instagram, and I was like, whoa, that's something that I need to look at and see. And so I think I sent her a little message, and then she offered to send me a book. And I think she did send me like a book and email, and I never got around to it. And then I was like, that's it. I need to order that book. And so I reached out to her. She said, how are you enjoying the book? And I said, well, honestly, I haven't started it yet. She goes, I'm sending you a copy. So she ended up sending me a copy. And this is the one. And I'll tell you, it is by far one of the best books I've ever read. It's so marked up and dog-eared and like highlighted, and it's just incredible. And it's called Patriarchy Stress Disorder, the Invisible Inner Barrier to Women's Happiness and Fulfillment. So that's what we're here to talk about. And I'm gonna bring her on the screen here for a moment, and we're gonna just have a chat about what patriarchy is, why it's so important, especially for women, because it affects all of us, but especially for women, why it's so important that we unpack this and understand this and see how we've internalized it, and more importantly, how it's affecting our behavior. And then, of course, the best part is how can we start to jailbreak, as she calls it. So please help me welcome the wonderful Dr. Valerie Rain. You'll be on here in just a second. Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing great. Better than ever after this generous introduction, Callan. It's such an honor to be here chatting with you. And I'm so thrilled that a woman leader like yourself has felt so deeply the need and importance of this work, and is walking walking this talk, living this transformation, and has become such a champion for this awareness and transformation. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah, it's been a while since I've been so excited by something. And, selfishly, it's because it's had such a huge personal impact. And I remember I'm 49 years old, just as of last week.
Ooh,
And
happy birthday.
thank you. And I grew up with a very strong father and 3 older brothers and a distant mother. So didn't have a lot of connection with women. And so I grew up thinking, I heard this word patriarchy, but I was like, that doesn't affect me. And then I was actually at a women's retreat that I was leading about 2.5 years ago. And one of the women there was a lot more educated in the whole patriarchy thing. And then she started to speak about it. And it was like the first time I thought, wait a minute, I think that may affect me. And it was just this weird, like I'd heard the word, but I'd never actually put myself within that bubble of the fact that it could possibly be affecting me. And so after that retreat, I started to work with a woman who was talking about, turn my phone off here, who was talking about her whole work is around bias, unconscious bias, unpacking privilege and things like that. And I started to work with her, and she started to teach me about these macro structures like capitalism and colonialism and patriarchy. And she started to challenge me to ask myself, what am I thinking? Why am I thinking that? Who taught me that? Where did I learn that? And so I actually went through a little bit of a mental breakdown at one point because I was just like, oh my God, I do not have an original thought in my head. Everything that I've been thinking, someone or something or some structure or some historical influence put that in my head. And it was such a huge awakening for me. And out of all the systems, obviously capitalism was a huge one for me, but I could really see having so much influence, especially with men, white men in my life. And again, this is not a male female thing, which we'll talk about. I've highlighted that part in your book here. But it started to really become clear to me how patriarchy was affecting me in a very concrete behavioral way, and then also in an internal psychological way as well. So I'm just so excited to have you here too, and you can feel my enthusiasm. So I want to talk about first of all, let's just start at the baseline, which is, in your opinion, what is patriarchy? So let's start there.
Patriarchy, first of all, is not men, as you've already, you've built the bridge to that distinction. Are you still there, Kellen? So not sure if we're still broadcasting together. I hope we are.
Yeah, you still are. When I go off screen, people can't hear me, but I want everyone to focus on you. So I'm going to pull myself off screen and just.
All right. Okay, so you'll be popping in and out. Okay,
yeah,
perfect.
yeah. Okay, great.
Okay, so patriarchy is not men. When I say patriarchy, I don't mean men. And when I say men, I don't mean patriarchy. Patriarchy is a system of inequality and oppression that has been in existence for over 10,000 years, for thousands of years. And it has been traumatic. Oppression is traumatic. It traumatizes people across the gender spectrum, and it traumatizes men and women separately and differently. There is some overlap, but there is also difference.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, we're just getting some technical things here, and I want to put your name up on the screen so that people can see. I wrote that right, R-E-I-N, is that correct? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. So I think one of the important distinctions for women especially, and for men as well, because in my experience, when I try to have some of these conversations with men, they take it really personally, as if I'm saying, you're the patriarchy.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting experience, because it's like, no, it's not you. It's not a personal thing. It's a thing. It's a soup. The way I think of it is a soup that we're all being marinated in, and it affects us differently. So I want to read this from your book, which again is Patriarchy Stress Disorder. Whoop, there we go. The discussion of the patriarchal culture and PSD, Patriarchy Stress Disorder, is not a question of men versus women. Both the masculine and the feminine are severely traumatized in patriarchy's oppressive system. The cost of membership in patriarchy is that we must fit into very narrow definitions of gender and the roles and expectations that come with it. This oppresses the authentic expression of everyone. And I just thought that was so profound. And it actually gave me some tools to have these conversations, be more inclusive when I was talking to men and women. I have to admit myself, when I was first awakening to this idea of patriarchy and how it's affecting me, I did kind of personalize it. I was like kind of mad at dudes for a while.
Yeah.
Is that normal? Do other people experience that?
Totally natural. When we're not aware of it, we're like, okay, so we're just living in that invisible inner prison. It feels like home. It feels normal because we were born into it. We didn't even know any better, or our mothers and grandmothers, etc. But then we begin to wake up. The first stage of the healing process, I call it waking up in prison. And it's maddening to see the prison walls for the first time. And of course, it's natural that anger would be directed at men because there's so much patriarchal conditioning that's coded into every interaction we've ever had with men and with women, but differently, right? Women also perpetrate this invisible inner prison in different ways.
And so what do you say in your experience? Like, how do you see patriarchy affect men and women differently? I know that your book talks a lot about the origin of trauma, one of the origins being trauma and ancestral trauma. But in terms of like our modern day experience of how patriarchy is influencing both men and women, what do you see, and how does it play out?
I'll start with men. It's easier. It's only easier because it's not my primary area of focus. I haven't studied men as much, and I'm not living in the man's body in this lifetime. So it's easier for me to start there. So for a man to fit into what patriarchy wants a man to be, it means that a man has to show up in these aggressive, competitive ways, detached from his deep, authentic emotions. Men cannot cry. Men cannot be nurturing. They cannot have that deep emotional connection, or else they are, fill in the blank, every insult that patriarchy offers to hurl at men have the feminine basis, right? They're sissies, pussies. They run like a girl. They cry like a girl.
They throw like a girl. Yeah.
Yeah. So it tells you something about how the system works. For women, and that of course wreaks havoc in men's mental health and relationships, depression, suicide, addiction. We're not looking at what's underlying all that. What's underlying all that is that men are straitjacketed. They don't have the ability to embrace the full spectrum of their emotions. Not that they don't have the ability, they don't have the permission. And then it becomes rigidified into what feels normal to them. For women, I love this story, this study that they've done with mice and cherry blossoms. To me, this is a very visceral explanation of how this operates. So the researchers introduced the smell of cherry blossoms to mice while simultaneously zapping their feet with mild electric shocks. The mice were later bred, and their children and grandchildren, when exposed to the smell of cherry blossoms, showed a strong fear and anxiety reaction. The researchers saw that these traumatic experiences were genetically transmitted. PSD is women fearing the smell of cherry blossoms. What is cherry blossoms for us in this day and age? Is everything that we desire that has been historically forbidden and punishable for women. Being visible, using our voices, standing in our power, knowing our true authentic desires and going after them, loving who we love, owning our own bodies, having our own money, making a lot of money. All of this has been prohibited, punishable, and we can look at being burnt at the stake and drowned and exiled, etc. as severe punishments. But there have been also more recent offenses, such as a man could, a husband could very easily lock up his wife in an insane asylum as recently as 1960s in the UK and the US, very easily. Just like say, well, she's crazy, and the only reason she's crazy is because she doesn't approve of him having a girlfriend, and dire consequences. And we could not have our own money until 1960s. A woman couldn't open a bank account in the
It's
US.
still, I was reading an international report on the status of women, not just 6 months ago, that was saying in a great percentage of countries, women still are not allowed to have their own bank accounts. So it's not even historical. It's our lifetime here.
It's our
It's still
lifetime.
going on.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this in, because that also allows me to show the collective nature of this trauma. So we talked about generational, that we've inherited, and the circumstances have changed, just like those mice who now can smell the cherry blossoms. They're not getting the electric shocks, but they still have the anxiety reaction. So when we step toward what we desire, our nervous system goes unsafe, 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 and we're either in fight, flight, or freeze. We run away from what we desire subconsciously. We are in freeze, we can't act, we can't move forward, or we are moving toward our desires, but our nervous system is constantly in fight. That means it's constantly in hyperactivation. And so there is so much burnout, there is so much adrenal fatigue, autoimmune. It is just cuts down women, especially high achieving women, at alarming rates. And speaking of women across the globe, like women in Saudi Arabia only got the right to vote 5 years ago. They got the right to drive a couple of years ago. It's very recent. And because we're all interconnected on this planet, every time we turn on the news, and we see and we hear about women, violence against women, or violations of women's rights, our system goes, me too. Our system knows that it's an expression of an overall patriarchal system that spells out that a woman's life, a woman's body, a woman's worth is less than that of a man. And that's the core of patriarchy. And that's the wound, I call it the wound of worthlessness, that we carry very deeply in our subconscious. And that's how it affects us.
And that last piece, I think, is so important, the subconscious, because I think what prevented me from really wanting to take a deep look at this and to actually maybe even see, oh, wow, this is affecting me. This is internalized to such a degree, and it's so hidden in me that I don't even notice it, which is how those macro systems work. They're not like, oh, there it is. It's very subtle.
Very hidden.
And my point of that was that so you have all these things that have happened. Those are all the shocks happening to us in this lifetime. Every woman, it's interesting. I highlighted this in your book as well, and I want to find it. Right here on page 39. I'm not sure if you can see all the writing on the side there.
Gorgeous. I love this so much.
And you're talking about getting to know your prison walls. In a way, the way I'm thinking of it now is getting to know your personal electric shocks, like how it actually has manifested. And so I just started to write down all of the things that I had heard and believed. That's the important thing. Believed, the ones that I was conscious of. Now, remember, in my opinion, like a lot of this subconscious is driving the bus.
Yeah.
And so that's even scarier, because you don't even actually know what's driving your decision making. You're just making decisions and you're like, why the hell did I do that? But the ones I did become conscious of, I actually did a post on the Female Strong group, and it was one of my most commented posts, where I said it was about being too much.
Yeah.
I'm too much X. And I just invited the women to say, what have you heard in your lifetime? You're too sensitive. You're too loud, too fat, too thin, too tall, too short, too white, too black, too this, is like too much, whatever, too crazy, too whatever it is. And every single woman was writing their own brand of it. And I was shocked at the breadth, the wide range of too muchness that women were conscious that they had been told.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just the conscious piece. So it's a little scary to think about. Like that's what we're aware of.
Yeah, Callan, you're right on. It's the tip of the iceberg. And so when I was writing the book, I uncovered this neuroscience research that actually shows that there's a lot of research, different neuroscientists coming to the same conclusion, that not only our subconscious is driving the bus, a lot of them are saying that our decisions or our actions are decided in our subconscious period. Our actions are decided in our subconscious. And then the conscious mind catches up later to rationalize them. And we're busy chasing the tail of the conscious mind. Oh, only if you change your thoughts, if you think positive thoughts, if you think confident thoughts, your life will change. Well, it turns out, not so much.
Yeah. You know, and I'll say, like you had talked about how these electric shocks or all these traumas that, you know, our female ancestors have experienced, as well as within this lifetime, our sisters on the planet are currently experiencing, and how we take all of that on. And you're saying, and then as we start to take action towards what we desire, we get stopped, we sabotage, we get sick, we do all these sorts of things. But I want to take it one level before that, which has been up for me. And you and I kind of talked about this a little bit, and when I did a session with you, and that was, there's times that I don't even know what I want. And like, there's a lot of self-help stuff out there, like that says, oh, you know, just get clear, get a pen and paper out and write down everything that you desire. And I swear I've tried to do that sometimes, and I'm just like I can't even contact what it is that I truly desire. So what do you have to say about that? Again, is that common? Am I normal? Like, that's prior to even taking action. Like, I don't even actually know what I want. I get confused and I start to like check out.
Yeah, what you've just described are the prison guards, I call them. These are the trauma defenses, and that's how they show up. When, just to take a step back so I can answer your question in the way that lands for everybody listening, I know you already know that from the book and from our conversations. So trauma is any experience that made you feel unsafe, physically or emotionally, and created trauma adaptations that keep you safe going forward. These adaptations show up as thoughts and stories. They show up as something in the body: numbness, checking out, energy going down, anxiety, autoimmune expressions, hormonal imbalances. There's a lot that can be going on in the body as an expression of the nervous system going into defense mode. And then actions and choices. They're also that's how our defenses show up as well. So what you're describing, getting in touch with our desires, that is the most dangerous thing a woman could ever do in the patriarchy. Just think about it. There is nothing more dangerous to the patriarchal status quo than a woman who's in touch with her authentic desires. Because there's nothing.
Okay, so why? Finish that sentence. Why is it the most dangerous?
Because the patriarchy wouldn't stand. It wouldn't stand a chance. So the way to keep the system going has been in conditioning women in traumatic ways to never, ever, ever, ever go to the place of their desires. And those instruments of conditioning they're woven into everything, into how our families operated, the structures of society and religion. It's everywhere. So it's, don't go there. Don't go to the body. First of all, our authentic desires, they don't live in the brain. They live deeper in, you can call it our wisdom self or intuition. You can experience it through the body. And in our culture, we are so separated from the body. We live in our heads. And the reason is because the body actually carries trauma. The body carries trauma. The mind may not even remember or even know what traumas the body carries, but the body never forgets, and it carries what we've inherited. and it shows up in different ways. Um, and it carries what we've experienced. And even if we don't remember it, the body doesn't forget and doesn't lie about it.
Mm-hmm.
So when we try to get in touch with what we authentically desire, we're basically knocking on that door. We're trying to open that channel of that connection with our embodied wisdom. And that channel has been offline for a while, for generations,
Mm-hmm.
not just in our lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very dangerous, and it's very protected by all the thoughts that distract us, the sensations in the body that go, oh, numbness here, or I can't feel anything, or I get like kicked out of there, or actions. Let me just do something other than this. So this is where I start working with women. This is the first practice I give them, and it's a part of, if you read the book, you can also download and if you don't read the book, you can download this practice on my website, the practice of connecting with desire. But I do it in a way that it's like a discovery phase. Let's look at how challenging that is. It's the hardest thing to connect with our desire for everyone. And the process is gradual. The more we get on the journey to heal, we appease the prison guards. There's a whole process, right, of where we get access to it. And then we begin to move on the journey toward the desire. And the prison guards come up in that phase as well. And then when we actually have what we want, oh, the prison guards come up big time, like huge. And that's all from authentic desires. It's not that forbidden for us or prohibited going after what we think we should want. Like I didn't have any problem getting those like 2 advanced degrees in psychology, right? Because this is something that the society tells you, okay, you can do well in school and get your degrees and get a job, blah, blah, blah. But when I went to the authentic desire and using my voice and having the life that I want, the relationship that I want, the freedom that I want, then my prison guards went to a tizzy, a complete tizzy. And that's been the work, right? Every step of the way.
Cool. I'm putting up where people can go to get your book there. It's Dr. Valerie Rain / drvalerie.com.
Right. That's right.
I got that wrong here, so I'm going to fix that. drvalerie.com/book. There we go. To get your copy of Patriarchy Stress Disorder. So you're saying that in addition, and don't say if, ladies, if I have any degree of trust with you, you need to get this book. Here, I'm going to flip it around here. It's the camera. It makes everything backwards. Go to drvalerie.com/book. You have to get the book. It's literally one of the best books that I have read in my entire lifetime in terms of taking what has been below the surface and influencing my decisions and my behavior to coming to the surface where I get to actually look at it and be like, wait a minute, and have choice around it. I'm not saying that these deep structures and this influence isn't still influencing my behavior, but now I feel like I'm gaining choice around it. So I can actually look at it and be like, okay, do I want to do it this way, or do I want to actually have choice and do it this way? So I highly recommend that you go and pick up this book. I was quite surprised about the connection to trauma. And I think that the cherry blossom analogy is so effective and so powerful. And I feel like one of the things that has played out in my life that I'm becoming more aware of is that, okay, so let's even just, I don't know my history as well as I should. My dad's always telling me that. He's like, learn your history. But in the times when women were burned at the stake because they were witches, I imagine being a mother of a little girl, let's say I was living in that time, I would say to my daughter, it's dangerous for you to gather with other women.
Yeah.
Even though I would love for you to have that experience of a sisterhood. And because when women were gathering in covens or in groups or whatever, they're, to share and to vent and to, make each other feel supported and to share practices of childbirth and child rearing and all of that. Women were gathering, they were called witches and they were killed. So I imagine as a mother living there that would have a daughter, they would say, even though I'd love for you to have that experience of being with women, it's dangerous. So don't do it. And then I feel like the way that society has unfolded, that more and more women were pitted against each other, like get her man and be sexier than her and thinner than her.
Yeah.
And women, white women and women of color, and like this whole spectrum. I mean, you and I are white women, we're women of privilege. So when we're talking about intersectional feminism, we've got more privilege than some of our sisters that have had other layers of things and trauma they've had to deal with. However, across the board, it's been women versus women, and we've been fed those messages. And so growing up, all my friends were guys. Right up until college, I have a picture of myself at like my 27th birthday. It was all guys and a couple of girls that were there. And since that's flipped, now most of my close friends are females. But it's taken a little bit of time to trust, to trust that another woman's going to be there for me. And obviously having my daughter was one of the biggest healing moments of my life, because I was like, oh, wow, there's no choice now. I actually really have to dive into a female-female relationship here and build that. But I feel like that's opened up a whole nother level of I think, healing. And so that's why I'm so excited to have you and some of our other guests that'll be coming up, is like women get to now connect, and I get to ask you, and you've asked me things too. Like I'll say, well, is that normal? And you'll be like, yes, here's what other women have reported. And I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm normal. And then, you'll ask me, but how about this? And I'll say, oh yeah, that's how I feel. And we actually get to share and form this sisterhood again. And again, have choice around how we're reacting. Yeah. I don't know. It was a rant, but
it's huge. It's huge. I'm going to take a sip of water here.
Yeah. So we've kind of
remembering the which days.
Yeah, I know.
Caught in my throat.
It is, it's interesting when we do talk a little bit about the trauma that has happened and that is currently happening. I sometimes do feel like bursting out in tears.
Yeah.
I literally feel it somatically in my heart area, like how sad that is. So let's talk about healing. So we talked about, this idea of all of us have been shocked over the years with different things. We've inherited that. It's currently going on as well. It's not gone. And again, different degrees, depending on what kind of woman you are and what socioeconomic class, what your skin color is, all of that's still happening. How do we go from where we are now, where we're just starting to be able to see it and understand it and know that it's influencing us? How do we go from there to jailbreak? Let's talk about that, which I know you cover in your book, but let's give us some like juicy ways that we can start to jailbreak.
Well, the great thing is that we're already on the journey together, because we're having a conversation about it, awakening, enlightening conversation. We're at the first step, the first stage of the journey right now together, that I call waking up in prison. We're taking a look at everything that's been holding us back, that we've been led to believe is a sign of some kind of a flaw or shortcoming, that we're getting in our own way, that we're self-sabotaging. And we're beginning to see, oh, wait a minute, it's not me. It's PSD that has created these trauma adaptations that are keeping me safe. So that's what we're doing in stage 1. We're unpacking ancestral, collective, and personal traumas, layers and layers. There's a lot to unpack. In stage 2, we meet our prison guards, these trauma adaptations and the mind, body, and actions that I mentioned before. And the beauty of this journey is that we're not going to try to get rid of them. Many systems in personal development will tell you, oh, just punch fear in the face and just do it. It backfires. It backfires because the prison guards are an expression of our system trying to keep us safe. It's our biology, psychology. It's very ancient. It's very wired in. So if we're trying to just break through and ignore them, they're going to double down in other areas. That's why also one of the reasons I believe that we're seeing this spike in autoimmune, in adrenal fatigue, and other troubling conditions. A lot of impact that we carry in the body is because we're constantly feeling unsafe doing those things that have been historically forbidden for women, but we're not addressing the underlying trauma. We're not making it safe. So it's not our fault. It's just nobody told us. We didn't know it. And In the third stage of the journey, we evolve the prison guards into bodyguards. And that's a very cool thing that happens because we can actually use the same biological, psychological mechanisms that are wired to keep us safe, and we evolve them, we reorient them to what is actually dangerous now versus what it was before. And it's done in conjunction with rewiring the nervous system to feel safe, to feel safe. Feeling safe doesn't come from saying I'm safe. It actually backfires as well, can backfire. Just like when you're told, oh, just come down, you're not coming down. You're actually getting more agitated and livid. Or at least that's how it works for me. Or it used to be when I was like really addicted to anger. It's been shifting big time since I've been doing this work. So with bodyguards by our side versus prison guards, we can move forward. And the way they work to protect us, let's say, they evolved to keep us safe by not having money because having money was dangerous and forbidden. And now we're reorienting them and teaching them, okay, look, it's actually dangerous now not to have money. And when I have money, I can create this, and that. I can contribute to causes that elevate the world in the direction that benefits everyone. I can feed myself and my family. I can buy freedom. I can buy time. I can buy wisdom and knowledge. And there's this whole relearning process. But again, it has to go through the body. And then can
I just pause you there and just give like a little testimonial to that piece? So, I've built a very successful business over the last 12 years or so. And I'm in the process of building a couple of other businesses. Now I have my fingers in a couple of businesses. So I've made a lot of money. We earned in our business in gross revenue, it was like over $30 million in a decade. So it was a successful business. And yet, do you know that the entire time I was the main salesperson, selling from the stage, selling online, front person, that entire time I didn't have any control over the money. Now, this is not to blame anybody in my company at all, because I had a very loving and intelligent and incredible business partner that was always encouraging me to look at the books and that kind of thing. But I never did in 10 years. So I'm making these millions of dollars. And yet anytime I would be faced with how the money was being spent, I was like, oh, just take care of it and just give me what you think I'm worth. 10 years. So millions coming in. And I remember, actually, I haven't told this story publicly. I was at my own mastermind and I wanted to help my dad out, who he has a parenting program called Raising Resilient Kids that he wanted to get out. And I remember at the mastermind sitting next to my business partner, my male business partner, who handled all the money and all the cash flow and the spreadsheets and all of that. And I remember kind of breaking into tears and saying, oh, I really wish I had enough money to buy my dad, to get my dad's business set up for him, because he was in his late 60s, early 70s. And I was kind of teary. And my business partner looked at me and he said, do you even know what our annual revenue is? And I was like, you and I need to have a talk at the break. And we went and had a talk. And he said, do you even know how much money we make, or how much you have access to? I had no idea, after 8 years in our business, that we were already above the 5 million in revenue mark, that the money that I had that was being set aside, that was coming to me, was more than enough to get my dad's business going. This was in front of all of our clients. That's how oblivious I was. I was fine to make it. But then as soon as it came in, there was some major block. Okay, so the reason I'm sharing this is because I'm a very intelligent woman. I have a degree in psychology. I have a degree in education. I have traveled multiple countries around the world. I've lived in multiple different countries. I have gone through therapy and counselor training and like workshops and seminars and books. And so this is I consider myself an intelligent woman. And yet here, still, this thing with the money was really a block for me. And I remember, ironically, year 10, we decided to start to pivot our business, and our business is in a big pivot right now. In 45 minutes, my business partner taught me how to read our cash flow. 45 minutes. I went through it. I was like, well, this is easy. Why did I not do this before? And I couldn't understand it until, of course, reading your book, realized that that was one of my adaptations, that actually knowing what was happening with the money. My job was just to make it, but not to actually handle it. I wasn't smart enough to do that. That wasn't for me. And then I dragged that pattern into my next business, where I started to see before my very eyes the same pattern unfolding, where I was in charge of a lot of the revenue generation, but still didn't have control over like how it was being allocated. And so that was actually the beginning of when I decided to incorporate Female Strong. I went to my lawyer. I didn't really know what I was doing. I incorporated Female Strong and said, that's it. I need my own bank account. I need my own checkbook. I need my own incorporation, my own book. I need to have some money that's coming into me that I make, that I control. And it was a huge piece of it. And because I've been doing a little bit, conversation with you. And so I wanted to share with the group this, because it happens even to intelligent, accomplished women. And I will say that since I have started unpacking it, reading your book, talking with you, talking with other women, looking, really taking a look at what's driving me, this past month, I have had the most lucrative personal month with money coming into my bank account that I've had in probably 5 or 6 years. And even before, if I did have a good month like this, I didn't control the money. But this now, I've had a lucrative month. It's come in and I get to allocate where it goes. So anyway, I definitely want to give you props for that. Again, because I am an intelligent woman, so it can happen to the best of us. If there's women out there thinking that there's shame or like, oh, I'm so stupid, I can't believe I did. It happens to the best of us. Yes. And you can shift it. And so I feel like this is the phase I'm in right now, is this idea of having my prison guards now start to act as bodyguards.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I want to add one other thing, and then we'll go to your next stage. But on page 33 of the book, I have everything marked. It says, throughout this book, I'll show you how to hold on to your joy as though your life depends on it, because it does. And I cried so hard when I read this. I just thought, oh my God, my life depends on my joy. And now I can use those old prison guards are now my bodyguards, and they're my bodyguards for my joy. That's the assignment I've given them. I'm like, hey, you guys, you are now in charge of my joy. I'm reassigning you. You just got a promotion, kind of. So anyway, I wanted to share that because I think it's really powerful, this shift from prison guard to bodyguard.
This is so big, and I'm so glad that you shared, Kellen. I so appreciate this. Women need to hear this and come out of the silos of shame and thinking there's something wrong with us, because it's not personal. We are very smart, and if we could have figured it out, we would have figured that out. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit deeper than the mind. It's a lot deeper than the mind. So it takes that willingness to make those discoveries that are uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. It hurts to look at it at first. Like, how come?
Yeah,
this has been happening, right? And I'm so smart. And I had that awakening moment too. That was in my marriage. Before I got married, I was actually very smart with money when I was single. I made investments, actually paid in cash for the down payment on our New York house. It was a big deal. I was in my 20s when that was happening. But then I got married in my late 20s, and all of a sudden, I call it taking a bite of the poisoned apple. That's what happened. I fell asleep. And now I see this pattern in so many women I work with. It's that milestone. For you, it might have been business partnership with a man that activated it. For me, it was marriage. Mm-hmm. And so that programming kicked in subconsciously. I certainly didn't think that my husband at the time was better in managing money, but the programming was driving it. So I stopped looking at the money. I stopped taking care of the money, and I couldn't tell. I was making a lot of money, and it was just going through my fingers into the sand. I don't even know. It's like the money was coming in and I was playing tennis with it. I was just like knocking it out of my court as fast as it was coming in. And then it came to the point of a separation and divorce. And I was like, I have no money. What
Mm.
happened? And it was so painful. And recognizing that PSD was at play there helped me not feel that shame and self-blame and like, okay, all right, now I see I have something to heal. I have something to reclaim. And it's a healing journey. The relationship with money needs healing just like any other relationship where there hasn't been integrity, there has been disconnection. And it's
Mm-hmm.
and it's one I'm on right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that healing has big ripple effects
Mm-hmm.
throughout all areas of life. So I'm so glad to have this conversation. I hope it's useful for those watching.
Yeah. And I'm glad. I love it when women share stories. Like I shared how it showed up for me, you shared how it showed up for you. And I think that more of this sharing has to happen so we understand that yes, it happens to the best of us and it's not our fault and we can heal it. And part of that healing is in communication and conversation. And part of the reason why I want this whole platform to be visibility is so women can start to look at each other and oh, now we can see one another, we can converse with one another. Now we can start to share our particular brand of healing. So just take me past, the guards now. We've got these guards that were our prison guards, and now they're working to you can
Hand in
really find
hand.
them like I have. You're in charge of
Yes.
my joy. You're in charge of, my desire. So then where do we go from there?
Hand in hand, we go into tunnel digging out of prison. And what that means is unearthing, uncovering deeper layers of embodied trauma, inherited, collective, and personal. And they are embodied. I recently had an experience that was very telling, certainly not something I would have remembered, but through my body, I had the experience of feeling my mom's anxiety when I was in her uterus
Hmm.
and how it translated in me feeling and knowing in my body that I didn't want to be in the world. The world was not safe. I wanted to hide, I wanted to disappear, and I struggled with anxiety. Until I started discovering this mind body healing work, my anxiety was near incapacitating, and I struggled with depression, and I was suicidal in my early 20s,
Mm-hmm.
late teens, early 20s. It was really, really deep. And uncovering those layers and healing those layers through the body unlocks these huge things that nothing else was explaining and shifts those things. It increases my level of comfort and pleasure in my own skin, the ability to be visible, connected, speak what
Mm-hmm.
is coming through me. It's really big. So with each layer of trauma we heal, we increase capacity. We increase capacity to receive and give and be, which is huge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Capacity. Trauma
So
is
we're
what
digging
happens.
ourselves out. We're digging our way through all of
We're
this
digging our way
trauma
out.
and layers. And you can still, I want to put this out there because I think this is important because when you start hearing trauma and trauma work, it can be like, oh my God, can I actually be, because I still have to function. I'm a mother and I run a business. You can do this work as you're remaining functional in the world.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you for that clarification. Yes. There's a lot of wisdom with which we approach this, because we work hand in hand with your inherent embodied wisdom. It's not the wisdom that that is external to you. It's the wisdom that your body knows how much healing you can do at a time. And
Ah.
even that subconscious material comes to your conscious awareness as you're ready, as you have capacity. And working with someone, a guide, a healing community, it
Mm-hmm.
extends your capacity, increases your capacity because you're plugging into a bigger nervous system, bigger than your own.
Mm-hmm.
Trauma is what happens when something overwhelms our capacity to cope. That's
Mm-hmm.
why a lot of traumas come from childhood when we didn't have capacity to cope and our parents didn't have capacity to hold it for us.
Mm-hmm.
So if we don't have capacity, it's not going to come up, and we never go like just blowing the lids off to dig to something because
Yeah.
it's not helpful and it can actually re-traumatize. This is not what we want to see happen. So we go with we work with that authentic wisdom hand in hand, and with every what seems like a baby step of discovery, there's huge wins in capacity that opens up, access to our treasures that have been buried and wrapped in trauma
Mm.
early in our life. Let's say that experience in kindergarten when you were so expressive and so joyful,
Mhm.
but something happened, like kids laughed at you, or something happened, and you went into a trauma response. You went into freeze, and now working through that, you reclaim that exuberance, you reclaim this joy, and so that's what happens through tunnel digging.
And actually, I want to plug this. You've got a free event coming up, because for me, part of my healing has not just been sitting at home in my bed reading your book, which, by the way, I have been titrating the dose. I've gotten to places where I'm just like, okay, I need a couple days where I have to put this down and integrate what is coming up for me, and then I go back to it. But
Very wise.
Yeah, but I've found that some of the biggest healing has been in different communities. So, one of our colleagues and friends, Laura Gisborne, had a Limitless Women event where you and I got to connect, and there was, I think, 84 women on that event, and just the level of healing in the small groups and the big groups. And so you're actually going to be hosting your own event for women to work through this, to support one another as we collectively work through these stages. And it's called the Thriving Experience. Is that the right website there? Thrivingexperience.com?
Yeah. If you could put the letter E after TH,
Oh, it's the Thriving
Oh,
Experience?
hold on. There's something with the spelling. The Thriving Experience. I'm not quick on spelling. English is not my first language, and that's not something I ever.
Okay, let me take a look and see. Is that the correct? Wait, I'll just there we go.
Yep, you got it. You got it. The
Okay,
Thriving Experience.
disappeared there. TheThrivingExperience.com. So tell me about what this is, and it's free, which is amazing. And yeah, just give me a little bit of the rundown on what it is and how our viewers can take advantage of coming to this event where we all get to work on this together.
If you're resonating with what you're hearing, if you're feeling in your bones that now is the time to heal, if you know you don't want to stay in the invisible in the prison anymore, this is really the event for you. We're coming together with a group of women. It's going to be a pretty big group. We may have close to 100 attendees. Some of them are going to be women who I've been working with, my clients, private clients, and clients in my program, The Thriving Solution. And some women have been working through the materials of the book. And some women, like yourself, are just learning about it, but having a strong resonance. So what we're going to be doing together, we're going to be unmasking the ways in which PSD is hiding in plain sight, the ways in which we were led to believe that something is wrong with us. And we're going to be healing by uncovering that this is indeed PSD and there's nothing wrong with us. And we're going to be having actually experiences. The Thriving Experience is an experience of what shifting from survival, staying in a trauma response state, to thriving may feel like in your body, in your life, in your connection with yourself and connection with other women. We're fully conscious about how much trauma there is in relationships between women and between women and men. And we're going to be creating opportunities to safely and in a titrated way explore that and release some of that and experience greater safety, greater connection with yourself, with others, and the ripple effects of you tasting this state of thriving, what it may feel like, getting that kind of okay, what might it feel like when I connect with my desire in my body? That's one of the things that we're going to be doing. Another thing we're going to be doing, we're going to be teaching you about working with prison guards, right? We're going to be doing it together. So we're going to be opening these doors. We're not going to be doing trauma healing tunnel digging work. We have safe, small containers for that if you're interested. We're going to be preparing you for doing that deeper work, and you're going to be receiving the immediate benefit of what becomes possible when you can see what's really holding you back, and you can work with what's holding you back in a new and actually effective way by creating that embodied safety within yourself and between yourself and other women.
Yeah, that's
and
great.
men.
And men. So this event, though, is for women. Is that right? Or
It
can
is. It is for
women?
women.
Great. So it's a free event to heal together. Register at thethrivingexperience.com. And then as Dr. Valerie was saying, then collectively we're going to be working through, first of all, just like checking out what's happening, making the unconscious conscious.
Yep.
And then, working together to start to really get a little bit of, what's the word? Agency, I think is the right word. Agency over, what we're actually dealing with and how we can start to shift it and have choice over it. And again, it's not that these internalized beliefs aren't going to affect us moving forward forever. It's that they're gone. It's just more, again, for me, it's felt like, oh, now I can see it. Now I can have choice. And sometimes I choose not to. Sometimes it still doesn't feel like, maybe I just will hold back there. But then next time I'm like, you know what? No, I'm gonna say something. And you start to get more and more agency over it until voila, we've gone through the tunnel and we're in the new world, which is, I think, one of your last stages, right?
Yeah, and in the new world, oh my gosh, it's an interesting thing what happens there. I call this stage savoring freedom. And you would think that it's the happily ever after, and you're done, and you're resting on the laurels, and everything is rainbows and unicorns. In reality, what starts happening when we get what we desire, we discover that there is such a thing as pleasure police that is monitoring our speed limits, right? The patriarchy sets the speed limits for joy, fulfillment, pleasure, money, connection, vulnerability, authenticity. And then we begin to break the speed limits, and the patriarchy police goes after us like, no, you got to slow down. So it's a different game. To me, it's a more exciting game. Well, it's all exciting, but it's not where the journey ends. It's where it continues, because with each stage of expansion, there is an invitation to go deeper and heal deeper layers of trauma. And yes, the journey continues, and with each stage of expansion, there's a stage of expansion, and there are huge rewards. So I call it the game of how good can it get. That's what we're mastering.
Nice. I'm going to play that game.
You
I
are.
want to play that game, and I'm definitely on your team. We can play it together. And for me, I feel like that's been one of the greatest joys in uncovering this, is that in recognizing what patriarchy is, how it has affected me, how I've internalized it, how it has played out in my behaviors, the secret, like there's the kryptonite of that, which is really horrible. But then the superpower of that is it's actually been women. It's allowed me to come closer to other women and have these deeper conversations and form friendships like you and I are, newly becoming beyond colleagues and becoming dear friends and wanting to support one another. And that's really exciting for me, is that this personal kind of processing of the trauma has had me move closer to women and closer to building that sisterhood. And I almost feel like bawling, like this world doesn't even know what is going to happen when women actually start to join hands. And that's why my with my logo and it's female strong, and underneath it says together. And it's time we all got together. It's time we started joining hands. We don't always have to all agree.
Yes.
We don't always have to have the same perspectives, but to start to just at least form that sisterhood again is just it's an exciting byproduct of this work. And I wouldn't want to do it alone. I don't know if I could do it alone.
We can't. It's collective trauma, and the healing has to be collective. And I am so on your team too. It is the same team.
Yeah.
And coming together is only possible in deep ways when we heal those traumas of separation that create the separation, feeling that something is wrong with me, creates that, okay, something is wrong with her, projection and judgment and self-judgment. And to transcend that, healing, in my view, is the only way to deeply come together authentically and have the freedom to disagree and still be connected and support each other.
As we're coming to a close here, I want to put a couple more websites up just so people who were inspired with us know where to go to get the book. And also about this very generous free event that you're holding, which I think is amazing. But I'll say one of the biggest shifts for me in my journey as a woman was I was very competitive with other women growing up. I was on women's sports teams, and we were always competing for who was going to be on the starting line, who would be the captain, and who was the better this and the better that, and who got the boyfriend, and like just for years and years and years. And then I remember going to this women's event called the Authentic Woman Experience. A friend of mine, Shayna James and Alexis, her name's escaping me right now, Alexis Shepherd. Anyway, and I remember us talking about jealousy as a women's community. And they gave me one simple little trick, which completely changed my life. And I think even opened me to having conversations with other successful women like you. And that was like, could you take the jealousy to inspiration? Instead of saying, oh, that woman is this, she's more this, and she's more that, and blah, blah, blah. Could you be like, oh my God, how'd she do it? I want to study her. I want to know her. I want to talk to her. I want to figure out how she got this amazing thing. I'm so inspired. And that was such a pivotal moment for me to go from, I'm no longer jealous of women. If there's a woman who I think is beautiful or sexy or smart or rich or successful or a great mom, I'm always like, get me in touch with her. Let me find out her secrets. Like, let's share. And so you are definitely one of those women for me. I'm so loving learning from you. I'm so grateful for everything that you went through to actually get this out, and especially with your history of not wanting to be visible and being shy and all of that, and to actually come up and be like, this is my offering. I'm going to sing it from the, I'm so proud of you and so proud to know you. So let's talk about where people can get this book. Yeah, my pleasure. Let's talk about where people can get this book. I'm going to put it on the I mean, worst comes to worst, just Google it. I think you can get it on Amazon and all these other places, but if you go to Dr. Valerie's website, I'm going to type that in right now, drvalerie.com, /book. Is that correct?
That's correct. And you can actually download the first chapter free and start reading it now as you're waiting for your paperback to arrive. You can also get it on Kindle, on Amazon. If you're interested in attending the Thriving Experience, the event, I ask that you start diving into the book before, because I want to make sure you're in the right place. You're in the right place for you and for this work. If you dive in and you find out like, oh, it's not resonating with me, right? We wouldn't want to, have that experience is not going to be aligned. But when you get your hands on the book and you feel like, oh my gosh, this is it, then, oh my gosh, we have an experience to share. And what Callan was sharing before about transmuting jealousy into inspiration, that's one of the practices that we're going to be teaching and experiencing together live.
Yeah.
So you'll have an opportunity to practice that right there and then. I'm so glad you brought this up.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. So let's close with, I'd like to give you the final words here. Let's close with, for any woman that's watching, if you could just give her one little nugget that, if she were really to be able to take that on and embody that little nugget, she'd at least, in the very least, be headed in the right direction for her jailbreak. What would that little nugget be?
Prison guards. Recognize when you get distracted, you're going to forget probably 90% of what we just talked about, if not more, right? You're going to close this tab and like, what was that? Nothing's wrong with the memory. It's the prison guards. They don't want you to step out of line, step out of the invisible in the prison, because they perceive it as life-threatening, which it had been for generations. So keep your eyes on the prison guards, and until you learn how to work with them, just do yourself, I don't want to say do yourself the favor. I don't know what it's going to do for you, but give a lifeline to your desire and a fighting chance, until you know how to work with prison guards for this to happen. So drvalerie.com /book, just downloading that first chapter, that also connects us via the newsletter. And at least you have that portal open, and let it drip in, let the healing drip in at whatever degree you're able to receive, ready to receive, desiring to receive. And it maybe now, maybe it's urgent, you're feeling it now, the Thriving Experience, you're signing up, you're right there, or it may be months or years from now. But remember that what you think, and if it's not moving you in the direction of your desire, what you think, what you feel in your body and your actions, if your life is not the picture perfect expression of what would be designed by your authentic desires, perhaps it's not you. Perhaps it's your prison guards. Perhaps it's PSD.
Very good. Yeah. Awesome. I love it. And then once you get to know those prison guards, just reassign them to something more functional. Like mine are on the joy case right now. So thank you so much, Dr. Valerie Rain. I love you. Love your work.
Love you.
Love all of this. Thanks for taking the time with us today and for this amazing experience. I'm going to put the links in with the video. And if you know anybody that could benefit from Dr. Valerie Rain's work and the Patriarchy Stress Disorder, please make sure you share it. Get the book, share it. Get 2 copies, give one to your friend, your sister, your mom. I think it would be great. I wanted to pitch this idea to you of us having a little book club where we all actually go through the book together.
That would be amazing.
And just talk about how it's impacting us and what we're noticing. Because I know that there's commonality in what women are experiencing, and sharing that has me anyway feel more normal. But there's also differences. And I think it's important to know, like, oh, this is how it affected me and this is how it affected you, especially when we're talking about women of different races and colors and socioeconomic status. And
100%.
Yeah, so I would love to get a book club going. So
I'm learning a lot. I'm learning a lot from my readers and clients in the Thriving Solution right now. I've learned so much about the differences and the commonalities and the experiences.
Yeah.
So it's a great idea.
Yeah, well, it's about time we all got together. So any excuse to do it is great. So thanks again, and thank you for watching. We're going to keep this recording up for a little bit here, so share it if you know any woman that could benefit from this. And until our next interview, thanks so much for tuning in. Okay, thank you, Dr. Valerie. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.